Princess Varelia of the Violori Imperium enjoyed the sound of her own voice almost as much as she enjoyed proving others wrong. She stood on the balcony of the Crystal Hall, overlooking a sea of diplomats, scholars, and nobles from dozens of star systems. Light from the twin suns filtered through the crystalline ceiling, turning her silver armor into something almost divine. Her eyes, bright violet and sharp with confidence, scanned the crowd like a queen certain she controlled every thought in the room. Today, she had chosen her target, humans. The galaxy listened closely. Any public declaration made by a Valori royal carried weight. Their empire was one of the most advanced civilizations in the Orion Arm, ancient, powerful, and proud of the superiority they believed was carved into their DNA. And Princess Varelia, the youngest of the royal bloodline, had built a reputation for bold claims and cutting remarks. "Let us speak honestly," she said, her voice echoing across the hall with smooth authority. "Humans are brave, yes. But bravery alone does not make a species strong. They inflate their victories like children bragging about surviving imaginary monsters." A soft ripple of amusement spread through the chamber. Some delegates exchanged smirks. Others nodded politely. She continued, her tone sharpened with mock interest. "They say human fighters defeated the Krakno swarm with pure determination. They say a single human ship held the line of Kaltor for 6 days without sleep. And they say," she paused for dramatic effect, "their soldiers have a spirit that cannot be measured." This time, the audience laughed outright. Even the more neutral species found it hard not to join in. The Valori enjoyed theater, and Princess Varelia knew exactly how to command a room. "Spirit does not win wars," she said. "Skill does. Training does. Intelligence does. Evolution does." She placed a hand against her chest proudly. "And in these, the Valori stand unmatched." "She lever," she said and gave her Santa. Cameras floated around her like glowing insects, broadcasting her speech across the galactic network. Billions watched. Many agreed with her. Others found her arrogance tiring, and a small percentage, most of them human, felt a slow burn rise in their chests. Varelia gestured with a graceful sweep of her hand. "Humans cling to stories because they cannot match reality. Their myths make them feel greater than they are. But the truth is simple. A human fighter is no more impressive than any average soldier of any other world." Behind her, members of the Royal Council nodded approvingly. Her voice grew even more confident. "Perhaps one day a human will try to prove me wrong. I would welcome such entertainment." That final jab was delivered with a cold, amused smile. The hall erupted into laughter again. But across the galaxy, Earth's Allied Command watched the broadcast in complete silence. Deep beneath the North American Defense Dome, in a secure strategy chamber filled with holographic screens and tactical staff, the room had gone still. General Kaido Shen, head of the Alliance Military Council, stood with his arms crossed. He was calm, but his jaw was tight. "Play it again," he said. The broadcast replayed. The princess's laughter echoed. Human pride was not fragile, but it was firm. Humanity had spent centuries proving itself not through conquest, but through stubborn survival. And although they were not the strongest or fastest species, they had something their allies and enemies repeatedly underestimated: the ability to adapt. When the video ended, General Shen turned to the room. "She wants entertainment," he said quietly. "Fine. Let's give her something she won't forget." There were murmurs. Some officers shifted uncomfortably. Challenging a Valori royal was no small thing. Their trials were harsh, and most species avoided direct conflict with them, unless absolutely necessary. A senior strategist spoke cautiously. "We must choose carefully. If we send a fighter, it must be someone who represents humanity well." General Shen already had someone in mind: Captain Elias Rourke, a man known not for ego, but for unbreakable will. A man who had survived situations that no soldier from any other species would even consider possible. A man who quietly completed impossible missions and then returned home like it was nothing out of the ordinary. A man the galaxy had barely heard of, not because he lacked skill, but because he never cared for fame. "He won't like being dragged into politics," said Commander Vale. Shen nodded. He doesn't have to like it. He just has to show them what a real human fighter looks like. Captain Rourke was summoned from a training post on Titan. When he arrived at Earth Command, he stepped into Shen's office with the calm air of someone who thought he was here for a routine assignment. He had dark hair, storm-gray eyes, and the kind of quiet presence that made people straighten their posture without realizing why. "Sir," Rourke said simply. Shen pointed to the paused broadcast screen. "Princess Varelia has challenged human fighters." Rourke watched for a moment. His expression barely changed, though he did raise a brow when the princess mocked human myths. "You want me to respond?" he asked. "I want you to represent us," Shen replied. "She's calling humans weak. I want her to meet someone who proves otherwise." Rourke considered the request. He wasn't the type to get offended by insults. He didn't fight for pride or reputation. He fought to protect, to survive, and to complete objectives. But he understood why this mattered not for him, but for everyone else. "What does the challenge involve?" he asked. "Her homeworld, a series of trials, each designed to expose flaws in foreign fighters. No outsider has completed all of them." Rourke nodded slowly. "When do I leave?" His lack of hesitation was exactly why he had been chosen. News spread quickly that humanity had answered the princess's challenge. Across the galaxy, opinions split. Some thought it was a foolish move. Others admired the boldness. The Valori saw it as amusing a human, actually daring to step into their trials. Princess Varelia heard the news while she was sparring with her royal instructors in a gleaming combat chamber. When a messenger told her, she stopped mid-strike, lowering her blade with a smile that carried both surprise and delight. "A human?" she said. "They accepted?" "Yes, Your Grace. His name is Captain Elias Rourke." She tilted her head thoughtfully. "I expected another species to take offense. Not humans." She resumed sparring, graceful and deadly. "Very well. Let us see what their champion can do." But a tiny spark of curiosity flickered in her eyes. Not fear, just curiosity. Because while she believed humans were unimpressive, she also enjoyed the rare chance to be proven wrong. The day Elias departed for Valoria, Earth held its breath. He boarded a sleek diplomatic cruiser, designed not for war, but for peace missions. The crew saluted him as he passed, though he looked almost embarrassed by the attention. As the ship lifted through the atmosphere and entered the star lane, Elias stood by a window, watching Earth grow smaller. He felt no fear. But he did feel pressure, not from the princess's challenge, but from the weight of representing an entire species. He had never been one for speeches or dramatic gestures. He preferred clear goals, clear steps, clear outcomes. But this mission was different. His job wasn't just to win a trial. It was to show the galaxy what humans truly were. Not myths, not exaggerated heroes, not weak outsiders, but beings who survived because they refused to give up. As the ship approached Valoria, a world of silver cities, floating citadels, and shimmering forests, Elias prepared himself mentally. He read files on the Valori trials. He reviewed tactical maps. He practiced controlled breathing, something he relied on to keep his mind calm in dangerous situations. When the cruiser landed, he stepped out onto the polished arrival platform. A crowd of Valori citizens watched him with open curiosity, some with smirks, others with polite disinterest. Then Princess Varelia appeared. She descended a staircase with perfect posture and regal grace. Her armor gleamed under the bright white sun. Her expression held amusement mixed with confidence. "So," she said, looking him over, "this is humanity's champion." Elias gave a respectful nod. "Captain Elias Rourke, representing Earth and the Allied Human Command." Varelia circled him slowly, examining him like a scientist studying an unusual specimen. "You are smaller than I expected," she said lightly. "But humans do enjoy surprises, don't they?" Elias didn't rise to the provocation. "I'm not here to impress," he said. "I'm here because you asked for proof." His calmness made her pause. She had expected defensiveness, pride, maybe even aggression. Instead, he stood still, steady, and unbothered. Very well, the princess said with a hint of a smile. Your first trial begins tomorrow. I hope your myths have prepared you. Elias met her stare with quiet determination. Myths don't make fighters, he said. Choices do. For the first time, Princess Varelia's smile faltered just a little, and for the first time, she wondered if she had underestimated humanity more than she realized. Captain Elias Rourke woke before sunrise on Valoria. The guest quarters given to him were luxurious, with smooth walls that glowed softly, and furniture shaped perfectly to the body. Any other visitor might have been distracted by the beauty, but Elias focused only on preparing for the day ahead. He stretched, checked his gear, and reviewed the notes he had memorized. He knew nothing here was meant to be easy. Princess Varelia had designed these trials to expose weaknesses. She expected him to fail. Outside his window, the Valorian capital shimmered under the morning light. Towers of silver glass curled into the sky like the spires of ancient temples. Floating platforms drifted between buildings while soft music played in the air, a natural hum created by the city's energy fields. When a calm chime rang through his room, Elias stepped out, ready. 2 Valori guards waited for him. Their elegant armor was almost ceremonial, but their expressions were unreadable. Captain Rourke, the first guard said, Her Highness requests your presence at the Arena of Ascension. Elias nodded and followed them through the city. Everywhere he went, citizens stared at him, some curious, some amused, some openly doubtful. Humans were not common on Valoria. Most had only seen them through broadcasts or stories. To the Valori, humans were strong in spirit but unimpressive in physical ability. Many wondered why a species known for adaptability believed one man could stand against Valorian trials. Elias ignored the stares. He focused on the air, the ground, and the subtle energy currents he felt in the environment. Every world had its own rhythm. Valoria felt calm, but precise, like a place that valued discipline. When the group reached the Arena of Ascension, Elias looked up. The arena was massive, open at the top, with crystalline walls that seemed to pulse like living material. Thousands of Valori had already gathered in the stands. Floating cameras circled the space, broadcasting everything to the galaxy. And at the center of the arena stood Princess Varelia. She wore lightweight ceremonial armor, shimmering with violet patterns, and she looked as confident as ever. When Elias approached, she smiled not warmly, but with the poise of someone certain of the outcome. Captain Rourke, she said, her voice echoing through the arena. Welcome to the first trial. Welcome to the first trial. Elias nodded politely. Thank you for the invitation. Some Valori laughed softly, amused by his polite tone. They expected fear or anxiety, but he showed neither. Princess Varelia gestured, and a large platform rose from the center of the arena floor. The platform rotated to reveal strange metallic rings arranged in a circular pattern. This trial, she announced, is the gravimetric gauntlet, an endurance test. Strength, stability, control. She stepped back, letting the crowd admire her confidence. Most species can withstand the course for 8 minutes. The very best last 12. She glanced at Elias, her eyes bright with playful challenge. Humans? I predict 3 minutes. Elias didn't react. He simply walked toward the platform and studied the rings. The rings were arranged like a path, each one glowing with shifting light. He recognized the design gravity regulators. Each ring increased gravitational pull in unpredictable waves. Too fast, and the body would collapse. Too slow, and the ring would activate another effect. The challenge wasn't brute strength, it was balance, timing, instinct. Do you understand the rules? Varelia asked. Elias nodded again. Move across the rings without falling. That is the simple version, she replied. But yes. He stepped onto the first ring. Instantly, gravity increased. His muscles tensed as a sudden heaviness pushed down on him. The audience murmured. The Valori could withstand intense gravity with ease. Their bodies were built for strength and agility. Elias bent his knees slightly, grounding himself. He took a breath and stepped to the next ring. The gravity dropped sharply. His body almost floated upward before stabilizing. He adjusted quickly, leaning forward so he wouldn't lose control. Then the third ring slammed him with a sudden surge 3 times normal gravity. His boots scraped the platform as he steadied himself. The audience watched with growing interest. Princess Virelia tilted her head. She had expected panic, or at least hesitation. Instead, he moved like someone reading invisible instructions. Every shift in gravity, every change in pressure, he adapted instantly. "He is calm," murmured one of her advisors. "He is human," Virelia replied with a light smirk. "They are used to chaotic environments." On the 5th ring, the gravity didn't just increase, it pulsed, like waves rolling through the body. Each pulse threatened to knock Elias off balance. He slowed his pace, planting each foot carefully, letting his body learn the pattern before moving again. Some Valori began whispering to each other. "He's reading it. He's learning the rhythm. He's not as slow as she joked." Elias reached the center ring. It glowed brighter than the others, and when he stepped onto it, the arena floor tilted beneath him. The ring rotated, shifting his center of balance. He leaned with it, then counterbalanced, staying upright. Princess Virelia's smile faded slightly. The challenge grew harsher at the far end of the platform. Gravity twisted sideways, pulling him in strange directions. On one ring, it felt as if the air itself pushed him backward. On another, his vision blurred for a moment as gravity distorted the light. He kept going calm, steady, adapting to each change with quiet precision. By the 9th ring, the crowd had fallen silent. By the 10th, even Virelia's expression had tightened. By the 12th, he had passed the standard time limit for most species. "Time?" Virelia asked sharply. 13 minutes, Highness," the announcer replied. The crowd stirred. 13 minutes was beyond elite levels. Elias continued until he stepped off the final ring and onto normal ground. He exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. Sweat glistened on his skin, but his breathing remained steady. Princess Virelia approached with a composed expression, though her eyes showed a glimmer of surprise. "Well done," she said carefully. "A respectable performance." Elias simply nodded. "Thank you." The simplicity of his response caught her off guard. He didn't boast. He didn't smile triumphantly. He didn't show pride. He treated it like any other task. That bothered her more than she expected. The crowd applauded politely, some genuinely impressed, others grudgingly so. Humanity had earned small respect today. But the princess wasn't finished. "Your second trial," she announced, "begins in 1 hour." Elias followed the guards to another part of the arena complex. This time, he entered a chamber filled with holographic projectors and strategic consoles. The room resembled a war operations center, with maps and simulations floating in the air. Princess Virelia entered the chamber moments later. Her confidence returned. "This is a Valori battle simulation," she explained. "A test of strategy and reflex. You will face our Royal Combat AI." The holographic battlefield activated an entire simulated planet, complete with terrain, enemy units, and hazards. Elias studied the layout. "Objective? Survive for 20 minutes, she replied. "No human has ever done so." The simulation began immediately. Enemy drones materialized, firing beams of light. Virtual explosions shook the platform. The terrain shifted rapidly, forcing him to dodge, roll, and take cover. But Elias didn't just avoid attacks, he studied patterns. He noticed how the drones moved, predicted their firing arcs, and used terrain to block shots. He even tricked the AI by pretending to move left before diving right. Princess Virelia watched with narrowed eyes. "He is unpredictable," one advisor said. "Yes," she murmured. "Too unpredictable." 15 minutes into the trial, Elias had destroyed several drones, outrun the collapsing terrain, and avoided hazardous zones with near-perfect timing. At 18 minutes, the AI launched its final assault. A wave of enemies filled the simulation. Elias ducked behind a ridge, then used a collapsing rock formation to take down half the attackers at once. When the timer reached 20 minutes, the battlefield froze. Elias stood straight, breathing harder now, but steady. The princess stared at him. No words formed immediately. Her pride rebelled against admitting he had exceeded expectations. But she couldn't deny what she saw. "Impressive," she finally said. Elias gave the same calm nod. "Thank you." Something unfamiliar stirred in her annoyance mixed with curiosity, and something she didn't want to name. The crowd watching through broadcast screens erupted with discussions. Humans were not supposed to do this well. They were supposed to fail early, giving the princess an easy political victory. But this one man was changing the narrative. As Elias left the chamber to rest before the next trial, Varelia watched him go with a thoughtful expression. "He's not like the others," she said quietly. Her advisor frowned. "Do you regret issuing the challenge, Highness?" "No," she replied softly. "But for the first time, I wonder what else humans are capable of." The galaxy watched as news spread. Humanity was no myth, and this was only the beginning. The night sky over Valoria glowed with ribbons of blue and violet light as Captain Elias Rourke prepared for the third trial. The city was beautiful at night, almost peaceful, but the calm air around him felt deceptive. He knew the princess had something far more dangerous planned this time. Her confidence during the earlier trials had cracked only a little, yet it was clear she had not expected him to pass both challenges with steady calm. Elias sat quietly in the guest courtyard. The artificial moonlight reflected off the smooth stone tiles and gentle waterfalls that surrounded the small garden. He listened to the water flowing, let his breathing slow, and allowed his mind to rest. He was ready to face whatever came next. Across the city, Princess Varelia paced in her private chamber. Her advisors stood nearby, nervous. She had remained composed in public. But now, alone with her thoughts, she admitted to herself that Elias had surprised her more than she expected. "I do not understand," she said, crossing her arms. "He is not stronger, not faster, not enhanced. Yet he keeps adapting." Her senior advisor, Elder Thalen, spoke gently. "Humans are unpredictable, Highness. They survive where others do not." Varelia frowned. "Survival is not mastery. The next trial will show his limits." Thalen hesitated. "You know the third trial is not like the others." She looked at him sharply. "I know exactly what it is." The third trial was ancient, older than Valori recorded history. It was meant to test the body, mind, and instinct at once. It was not a simple competition. It was a shared test, a forced partnership between the challenger and the one who issued the challenge. It meant she would face it with him. Varelia had spent her whole life training for the possibility of entering this trial. But she had never thought she would do it alongside a human. When dawn arrived, the arena of ascension opened again. But this time, only a small number of observers were allowed. The trial was considered sacred and too unpredictable for public spectacle. Even broadcasts were limited to the highest councils. Elias walked into the arena and immediately noticed the change. It was quieter, more serious. Even the air felt heavy with anticipation. Princess Varelia stood at the center, wearing a different kind of armor, now lighter, flexible, and marked with glowing runes. Her expression was calm but more cautious than before. "Captain Rourke," she said, her voice steady. "The next trial is known as the Convergence Challenge. It will test not your strength alone, but your mind, your decisions, and your spirit." Elias nodded. "I'm ready." "You should understand something first," she continued. "This trial cannot be taken alone. Because I issued the challenge, I must enter with you." Elias didn't react with surprise. He simply studied her posture, her expression, the tension in her shoulders. "Then we survive it together," he said. Varelia blinked, just once. She had expected confidence, maybe arrogance, but not partnership. Before she could answer, the arena floor shifted. The ground beneath them split open with a deep rumble. A circular platform descended into darkness as walls closed in around them, sealing them in. They dropped into a vast biodome hidden beneath the arena, an environment filled with alien landscapes, strange plants, and shifting terrain. The dome was enormous, larger than any forest on Earth, and its roof projected false skies that flickered with different colors. Elias and Varelia landed on soft ground covered in glowing moss. A low hum vibrated through the air as the trial activated. The environment changes every few minutes, Varelia explained quickly. Different hazards, illusions, puzzles, each meant to test instinct and judgment. Elias scanned the surroundings. What's the objective? To reach the exit, she said. But the exit moves. And the dome reacts to emotions. Elias arched a brow. Reacts? Yes. If you panic, it becomes chaotic. If you feel anger, it becomes violent. If you feel fear. She paused. It grows darker. Elias gave a quiet nod. Then we stay steady. The trial began with a soft tremor. The glowing moss faded into a darker shade. Trees around them shifted, their branches twisting as if waking from sleep. Strange bird-like creatures flew overhead, leaving trails of sparkling dust. Varelia moved with graceful speed, leaping over a rock formation. Stay close. Elias followed, keeping pace without difficulty. His movements were less elegant, but efficient. Minimal energy. Maximum awareness. As they advanced, the ground ahead cracked open. A stream of glowing liquid flowed, blocking their path. Varelia jumped across with practiced ease. Elias studied the distance, then took a running step and crossed cleanly. You learn fast, she said as he landed beside her. Observation helps. The dome shifted again. The trees bent inward, forming a tunnel. Blue mist began seeping through the roots. Elias felt a strange sensation, like distant whispers brushing his thoughts. It's an illusion field, Varelia warned. It creates images from your memories. They are not real, but they can confuse you. As they moved through the mist, shadows appeared around them. Elias saw flickers of old battlefields he had survived, blurry shapes of enemies and falling debris. But he ignored them. He kept his focus on the princess and the real environment. Varelia glanced at him. Most challengers panic here. I've lived through worse hallucinations, Elias replied calmly. But as they pressed deeper, the illusion field changed. This time, shadows formed around Varelia, figures from her past. Warriors she had trained with. Her late mother. Advisors who had doubted her when she was younger. She slowed, her breath catching slightly. Elias noticed immediately. They're not real. I know, she whispered. But her voice was tense. Elias stepped in front of her, blocking the illusions. Look forward. Keep moving. Her eyes met his. And for a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. She steadied herself and followed him out of the mist. As soon as they left the tunnel, sunlight faint and artificial returned. The illusions melted away. Varelia exhaled slowly. Thank you, Elias nodded, saying nothing more. Before they could continue, the ground shook again, much harder this time. The terrain around them shifted rapidly, forming cliffs and ravines. A creature emerged from the trees, large, reptilian, with glowing patterns across its body. Varelia tensed. Trial Guardian, the creature roared, shaking the forest. It charged. Elias stepped forward without hesitation. You take left. I'll draw its focus. She blinked. You're directing me? Unless you prefer random chaos. Her lips twitched, almost amused, even in danger. Fine. Elias sprinted toward the creature. Its heavy steps shook the earth as it lunged. Elias rolled to the side, picking up a fallen branch and striking the creature's leg to draw attention. Varelia leapt onto a low branch and launched herself above the creature, landing lightly on its back. She struck a glowing point near its spine, distracting it long enough for Elias to move underneath and hit another weak spot near its chest. The creature roared again, but its aggression weakened. Together, they pushed it back until it dissolved into blue mist, the trial acknowledging their teamwork. Varelia dropped to the ground, breathing harder than before. Elias steadied her with one hand. You fight differently than I expected, she admitted. Training, he replied. And instinct. They continued through the dome. Each shift brought new challenges, rising sands, twisting vines, extreme temperature swings. Sometimes Varelia led, sometimes Elias did. They balanced each other's strengths without speaking much. Hours passed. Finally, they reached a clearing where a tall tower of shifting light stood the moving exit. But as they approached, the dome darkened. Heavy fog rolled in. A deep vibration filled the air. Something was wrong. Varelia stiffened. The dome is responding strangely. Elias felt it too. This wasn't like the other changes. The air was colder, and the environment felt unstable. Suddenly, the ground split beneath Varelia's feet. She slipped, falling toward the ravine. Elias grabbed her arm instantly, pulling her back just as the ground crumbled. She stared at him, breathless. "You didn't even think." "No time for thinking," he said. "Only action." Before she could reply, another tremor hit. The trial was collapsing early, something that had never happened before. They ran toward the exit tower as the world around them twisted into chaos. Trees fell, the sky flickered, and the floor rippled like liquid metal. They reached the tower just as a massive shockwave rippled across the dome. Elias pushed Varelia toward the exit first. "Go." She hesitated for a single second, something she never did, then stepped through the shimmering barrier. Elias followed immediately. They stumbled into the observation chamber as the dome behind them went dark. The trial had ended violently, unpredictably. Varelia gasped for air, turning toward Elias. And for the first time, she looked at him with something other than amusement or superiority. She looked at him with respect. "You protected me," she said softly. "More than once. Even when it put you at risk." Elias met her gaze with calm eyes. "You're my partner in the trial. We leave together." She stood very still, unsure what to say. No one outside her family had ever spoken to her like that, not as royalty, but as an equal. And for the first time in her life, Princess Varelia felt unsure. Not about herself, but about the things she thought she understood. The humans she mocked suddenly seemed far more complicated than her assumptions, and Captain Elias Rourke, quiet, steady, impossible to predict, had become a mystery she could no longer ignore. The palace was unusually quiet the day after the Convergence trial. Even the steady hum of the energy field seemed softer, as if the city itself was still recovering from what had happened. News of the trial's sudden collapse had already spread across Valoria. Many whispered that the dome had reacted to the emotional conflict inside. Others said it was a sign that something in the ancient system needed repairing. But no one could deny one thing. Captain Elias Rourke and Princess Varelia had survived it together. Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the capital, drinking a cup of plain water while watching the morning light spill over the silver buildings. He felt the soreness in his muscles from the trial, but he'd lived through worse. What stayed in his mind wasn't the danger or the collapsing dome, it was the princess. Her reactions, her confusion, her respect. He sensed that today would bring the final challenge, whatever shape it took. Behind him, the door slid open softly. Princess Varelia stepped outside. Her armor was gone. She wore a lighter, more formal outfit, though still woven with royal patterns. Her hair was tied back, and for the first time since he met her, she did not carry the aura of someone fully in control. "Captain Rourke," she said quietly. Elias turned. "Your Highness." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the city breathe. "I have been thinking," she said finally, "about everything that happened yesterday." He waited. "When I entered the trial with you, I believed I would be guiding you, protecting you." She looked down at her hands. "I did not expect the opposite." "It was a team effort," Elias said simply. "Perhaps, but you made choices I did not make," she replied. "You acted without considering status. You treated me like someone worth saving without question." "You are," he said. Her eyes flicked to his, sharply surprised again by his simplicity. Before she could respond, Elder Thalen appeared at the door. "Highness," the advisor said. "It is time." She nodded and turned to Elias. "The final trial is ready." The arena had been transformed overnight. No audience, no reporters, only the princess, Elias, and a few silent officials were present. The floor was smooth and plain, with no devices or platforms. Elias stepped onto the arena floor and sensed something different immediately. There was no danger, no traps, no obstacles, only space. Princess Varelia stood at the opposite end. "This trial," she said calmly, "is not about strength, not about strategy, and not about survival." Elias listened carefully. "It is about truth." He didn't speak, but she continued, her voice clearer now. "The Valori believe that a warrior's final test is to face another being, not as an enemy, but as a mirror, to reveal what truly lies behind their purpose." She took a slow breath. "I questioned why you were doing this. No reward, no glory, no fame. Most challengers enter these trials to prove something about themselves." She looked directly into his eyes. "But you fight for reasons I still do not fully understand." The floor beneath them lit up in soft blue lines, forming a circle around both of them. It hummed gently, responding to their presence. "This circle," she said, "is a truth field. It reacts to emotion and intention. If either of us lies, the circle fades. If we speak honestly, it grows brighter. This is how the Valori choose their allies." Elias nodded once. "What do you want to know?" Varelia hesitated, then stepped closer. "Why did you agree to this challenge?" she asked. Not the official answer, the real one. Elias remained silent for a moment. The air in the circle pulsed softly, waiting. "Because humans were insulted," he said finally. "Not with anger, but with misunderstanding." He looked at her calmly. "We don't fight to prove we're strong. We fight because we must. Because sometimes we have no other choice." The circle brightened. She exhaled slowly. "Then why risk your life for me in the trial?" "Because you were in danger." "That is not enough," she insisted. "You could have advanced alone. You could have tried to win without me." Elias met her gaze. "Winning alone isn't winning." The circle glowed brighter, warm, and steady. Varelia looked down, struggling with the weight of his words. "In my world, strength means surpassing others, being above them. In mine," Elias said softly, "strength means standing with them." The brightness of the circle surprised even the royal advisors. Varelia stepped closer again. "And what do you think of me now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Elias took a moment before he answered. "You're better than the person who mocked us." The circle flared, bright, almost radiant. Varelia's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected him to see her growth because she had barely acknowledged it herself. "And you," she said quietly, "are not at all like I imagined." She stepped fully into the center of the circle. "I thought humans exaggerated their stories. I thought your species created myths because you needed them." She paused. "But I was wrong. Humans do not need stories to feel strong. They act strong even when they feel weak." Elias didn't respond, but his silence held acceptance. Varelia drew a steady breath and placed a hand on the circle's glowing edge. "Captain Elias Rourke, you have passed every trial, including the one I did not expect you to pass." He waited for the announcement. "I acknowledge that the Valori Imperium misjudged humanity. And I acknowledge that I misjudged you most of all." The circle shone with a final burst of light before fading gently into the floor. The trial was complete, but Varelia wasn't done. She walked toward Elias until she stood only a few feet away. "Why did the dome collapse?" she asked quietly. "It reacted to stress," Elias said. "No," she replied. "It reacted to emotion. You stayed calm." "I did not." Her voice softened. "When I thought I would fall, I felt fear. Real fear." Elias looked at her with steady eyes. "Fear is normal. Not for someone raised to believe she must never show weakness," she whispered. "And do you know what frightened me most?" He shook his head. "The thought that you would fall with me, that my mistake would cost us both." Elias didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to royalty expressing vulnerability. "And afterward," she continued, "when you pulled me back, something changed." She drew a slow breath. I realize that your strength is not in your body. It is in the choices you make, somewhere deep inside. She understood now why humans survived against impossible odds. She respected him not as a challenger, but as a person. Elder Thalen approached them cautiously. Highness, the council awaits your declaration. Varelia nodded. She turned toward the center of the arena and spoke, her voice echoing with authority and sincerity. I, Princess Varelia of the Valori Imperium, declare that humanity has proven itself as a species of resilience, clarity, and remarkable spirit. The myths are not exaggerations, they are reflections of who they truly are. She looked at Elias. And Captain Elias Rourke has shown the galaxy what a human fighter really is. When she finished, the arena lights softened, signaling the end of the challenge and the beginning of something new. A partnership, an alliance, a quiet understanding between two very different beings. Later, as Elias prepared to leave the arena, Varelia walked beside him. Her tone was softer than ever before. What will you do now? She asked. Return home, Elias said. Report that the trials are done. And after that, I go where I'm needed. She gave a small smile. Humans always do. They reached the exit. Elias paused. What about you? Varelia looked up at the bright Valorian sky. I must rethink many things. About my people. About other species. About myself. She hesitated. And maybe, about humans. He nodded once. A quiet, mutual respect passed between them stronger than any trial. As Elias boarded the diplomatic cruiser home, the last thing he saw was Princess Varelia standing on the platform, watching the ship rise. Not with arrogance, but with admiration and curiosity. The galaxy believed humans were simple warriors, surviving by luck and persistence. But now, thanks to one quiet man who refused to give up, the galaxy knew the truth. Sometimes, the strongest fighters were not the ones who boasted the loudest, but the ones who carried strength without needing to show it. And Elias Rourke had become a legend that even the princess could no longer mock.